Since we're not saving it, there was one thing on deposit records. Just we're not saving it, there's one thing on.
It's also over live. So whatever you tell me, remember it. Here. I'm coming.
Hope this is not going to be shows up. How you doing? Good. I feel more comfortable knowing that. I'm sorry for my craziness. I'm going to be close to the front. I just feel better knowing I can't get anybody sick. Yes.
I have to. But again, it's one of those where we feel notes.
I'd rather find out from fine people than
Yeah, I've always loved it.
this is one case where we haven't spoken to them.
But
Just, you know, it's like, Mark, we're having to check. And I said, I'm going to talk about a different option for
this one is.
I'm fully vaccinated. How you doing?
Really? Why?
Folks, as a friendly reminder, just make sure your cell phones are either off or on silent for the service. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now please rise for the family.
Please be seated. Shiviti Adonai L'Itami, Kini Nini Balamot. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore, as my heart exults, soft and my soul rejoice, for my being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Death has taken our beloved Andy Pasternak, and our friends, our family, they're grieving in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. And we ask you, God, to hear them, to be with them. For Andy's love that united us in life in which death cannot and will not ever sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path and continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart, gifts of his mind that brought us happiness, brought us joy, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures. It brings us the ever new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. We hear them first in Hebrew to honor our tradition, followed by the English for our understanding. Psalm 23 will be led by Rabbi Jeffrey Gale.
Adonai Roki Loetza ben Abdeshi Abisena Menu Hoya Halegi, Nashur Feg and Kay, Great Serekama An Shubo, Gam to Electric Gates and Nova Logirara, Katimadi, Shifhal Shanteta Ema in a Hamuni, Taroka Fanai Shuhanek Terrada, Nishana Veshana Moshi Siravaya, Tova Cassidy Funi, Koyene Haya, Shafti the Faith, your rest Amin. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
Psalm 121. Esa'enai el harim mi'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri mi'im Adonai es hashamayim va'aretz. Aliten lamot avlecha. Yanum Shomecha. Idolo Yamun Velo Yishan Shomer Yisrael. Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha, Ayad Eminecha. Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka V'yareach Balayla. Adonai Yishmerecha Mikolcha, Yishmor Nafshecha. Adonai Yishmor Tzetecha Uvoecha Ve'ata V'adolam. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. See, your protector does not slumber. The protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection. God is at your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul. You're going and you're coming, now and forever. We are assembled this afternoon with our friends, with our family, in the darkness that has fallen on their home. So we raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for comfort and asking for strength. We need light when gloom darkens our lives. We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. May we find these in God who preserves from destruction all that is good. And let us find them in our loved ones and our companions who do God's work by binding up the wounds of the stricken. Who among us here this afternoon has not passed through trials and bereavements ourselves? Some of us bear fresh wounds in our hearts and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. And those of us whose days of mourning are more remote still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to our sorrowing hearts. May our sharing of sorrow and our deeds of solace bring comfort to all of Andy's loved ones. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevolach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. We are an ancient people, and we are well acquainted with griefs in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow, sadly, are not strangers to us. But what the centuries have taught us is that a good name endures beyond the grave, and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given us. You gave us Andy Pasternak, a loved one who will not ever be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. We say, Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. And we pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love. As we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevolach, blessed be the name of God now and forever. We come together today to say a fond goodbye to Andrew Pasternak, Chuni Yaakov ben Aharon Ve'Esther. And in a few minutes, you'll be hearing from his family, from Rabbi Judy Cohen Rosenberg. But I just want to say a few words as well. He was a husband, a father-in-law, a grandfather, uncle, and cousin. He was a great teacher and an amazing friend. For me personally, it started at Temple Emmanuel of East Meadow. Deanna, you and Andy were my confirmation teacher. And I have to tell you that of the 11 of us that were in the confirmation class, the 9 that I keep up with are all heavily involved in Jewish education. 2 of us rabbis, 1 runs a JCC, many on the boards of their synagogues as well. That's because of the influence of you and Andy. But it grew into so much more than that for me. There were the Passovers that our families celebrated together. When I ran the youth groups at the Suburban Temple of Wantagh, whenever I came into the building, one of my first stops after saying hello to you was just to walk by his classroom and just wave hello. At Purim carnivals, even though he was supposed to be watching the kids and walking around, he would always come up to me and say, Mickey, what do you need me to do? How can I help? And you just watch the class, enjoy yourself. I want to help. At the light conferences, Andy was always at the sign-in table helping out. What can I do? What do you need? The 2 of you were at my ordination when I became a rabbi. And a few years ago, both of you were at my installation when I became the head rabbi at Beth Am. Whenever I called to see how Andy was doing, he was more interested in what I was up to. And I would say, Andy, I called to talk to you, to see how you're doing. But his response was always the same. But I want to know how you're doing. How are your students? How are your congregation? How's your family? Most recently, he asked, could I sign him up for our live stream, the Zoom Friday night services? He said, Mickey, I want to see you lead services. I like how you do it. And again, I would say, Andy, right now it's not about me, it's about you. And he would say, yes, but what's going on with you is so much more interesting than what's going on with me. And that's how I remember him. Always being more interested in the welfare of others than talking about himself. Andy, the students that you taught, the students that you laughed with, the students that you inspired, and there were many, all mourn along with your family. We read that Rav Chanan bar Abba and Rav said on that very day that Abraham, our father, departed this world, all the giants of the nation stood in a row and said, woe to the world that has lost its leader. Woe to the ship that has lost its captain. Woe to all of us who have lost a great man. In Pirkei Avot we read that Ben Zoma said, who is wise? One who learns from all men. As we read in Psalms, I have gained understanding from all my teachers. Andy, on behalf of all your former students, thank you. Thank you for the privilege and honor of learning from you. And not just calling you a teacher, but of also being able to call you a friend. This time I invite Mr. Rachel.
Say Adonai Eloheinu, B'yamecha Yisrael, U'tefilata B'yahava Tikabel, U'tihi Miratzon, Tamid Avodat Yisrael. Yisrael Amecha. Karov Lechom Korav Levadecha Lechanenu. Shifu Aleinu V'techesena Einenu B'shuvecha L'Tzion.
Rabbi Judy Cohen Rosenthal.
We are taught that what we are here to do is called Chesed Shel Emet, the only true righteous act that you can do that is never requited, and along with accompanying a loved one to the grave, it is also Chesed Shel Emet to speak words of eulogy. So I'm going to invite Brent and then Michelle, Brent, Andy's grandson, and Michelle, Andy's daughter, to come forward to speak, and then I'll return to speak as well.
Being a writer, it's all fun and games until you have to write for someone's eulogy. But there's no one's eulogy I'd rather write for than my grandpa Andy. It's with an extremely heavy heart that I bid farewell to this wonderful man. Ever since childhood, my grandpa was a role model to me and others in many ways. As a Jew, he inspired me to get more in touch with who I am, both in the way that I move about the world and in the art that I create. As a man, he was gentle, kind, curious, and never took things too seriously, things that I try to emulate every single day. As a human being, he could make me smile no matter how sad, scared, or upset I would be. I remember we would read Scooby-Doo books when I was a child. I was always so scared, but he would always make me laugh through the fear. And I hope he's done that for many of you. He'll be greatly missed by me and many others. So thank you for everything, Grandpa. I hope you're resting easy now. Thank you.
As we're talking about my dad with Rabbi Judy and Rabbi Mickey, the same theme kept coming up over and over again. What a kind, caring, and genuine person he was. So many people were kind enough to share memories of my dad with me, and they all said the same thing, that he was such a nice person. It was evident that he had a positive impact on so many lives. This is his legacy, and will ensure that he will live on as these people pay it forward. I know this would make him immensely happy. He loved his children and grandchildren fiercely. He was so proud of us and always made sure we knew that. He gave the best hugs. He always fought for those less fortunate. Along with my mom, he marched and protested. We always referred to our parents as hippies without the drugs. My dad loved my mom. Maybe even more importantly, he respected her and treated her as an equal. His career and needs were no more important than hers. I am forever grateful that this was the partnership that they modeled for me and my siblings. My dad was an incredible writer. Our temple, Community Reform Temple, gave each of their children their own prayer book when they became a bar mitzvah. My dad wrote the most beautiful letter to me on the inside cover. I still have that prayer book, and it will always be one of my most prized possessions. One memory that stands out for me: when I was a senior in college, I met with my advisor, and he informed me that I had been accepted into college without the required amount of math classes, and I needed to take a math class in order to graduate. Well, I panicked. Hadn't taken a real math class in quite some time, and math was not my best subject. I was furious that no one had mentioned this until I was about to start my second semester of my senior year. I called my dad in a panic and informed him I was done with school and I wanted to come home. It got quiet on his end, and then he started asking me questions. He never got mad, never raised his voice. He just talked to me off the ledge, and then helped me come up with a plan so I could complete my schooling and graduate. I hope that all of you here have a special memory of my dad. I hope you all keep that memory with you and use it to inspire you to help someone when they most need it. My dad would be so happy to know that he had inspired acts of kindness to help heal the world.
The Haftarah for this Shabbat comes from the prophet Micah. כי לך הדעת מה טוב, מה אדוני דורש ממך, כי מעשות משפט, אהבת חסד והצנע לכת עם אלוהיך. Know what is good, what God asks of us, only to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Few people took that message to heart as well as Andy Pasternak did. He did justly. From his professional work all the way through to the end of his life. He was an expert witness for Social Security and private lawyers whose clients were applying for disability, and he was always impartial, fair, and honest. It's why he was in such demand. He loved mercy. Ross said it best in describing his father-in-law as a second father and admiring Andy's caring and kindness. Most of all, Andy walked this earth humbly. He had every reason to be proud of his family and of himself, but rather than being prideful, Andy was loving and joyous. He always put others first. When you called him, as Rabbi Mickey said, he always turned the conversation quickly towards you and what was going on in your life and your family, rather than to talk more about himself. And he was an O&O, a one and only child of Aaron and Estelle. He met Deanna at Queens College Hillow. They were on a retreat together where Deanna was to teach Israeli folk dance. She got sick, and Andy was so attentive and took care of her so beautifully and ultimately drove her home so she wouldn't have to be on the bus, that when Deanna's mother met him and saw how caring Andy was, she said, "That's the man you're going to marry." Mother's Day. Andy and Deanna did marry a few days before Andy's college graduation, and they settled in Flushing. Opposed to the Vietnam War, they decided to have a baby so Andy wouldn't be subject to the draft. Seth was born. Seth's service to our country was always a source of pride to Andy and Deanna, even if it did provide a dose of irony. Andy and Deanna were so happy to be parents that they also had Michelle. Long awaited for Rachel was born 10 years later. Andy was ahead of his time in being an active, involved, hands-on father. Seth remarked about how his father's presence as a dad, that Andy was a good listener and he was non-judgmental. They always enjoyed Mets games together. Michelle, you did not share this story, so I'm going to because I thought it was so endearing. Andy was so proud and took such joy in Michelle's acting that when she was writhing on the floor in a modern version of the Scottish play, it's bad luck to say the name of that Shakespearean work, Michelle glimpsed Andy waving at her. His enthusiasm was just so endearing. Rachel shared many overseas trips with Andy as her travel companion. They visited Paris and London, San Francisco, and Israel together. They were fortunate to be able to share their love of travel. As you heard, Andy was ahead of his time. He always encouraged Deanna to do what she wanted to do, even if it was something that didn't interest him. He was particularly supportive of her roles in synagogue life as a board member, as a principal, as a rabbi. He did the same for the kids, wanting them to pursue their passions and be happy. Grandpa Andy played on the floor with Brent, Benjamin, Simon, and Sarah, and took them on outings who all brought him such great joy. It was terrific to see his face light up if he was just thinking about you. Being a member of a Jewish community was a priority for Andy. When he did vocational counseling at CRT, he met Rabbi Donald Gluckman, and he knew that he had found a home. This was solidified when Deanna got a flat tire on the way over to meet Rabbi Gluckman, and Rabbi Gluckman came and picked her up. They both knew that they had found the right place to participate. Andy and Deanna became extremely active on the education committee and as volunteer teachers. In teaching, Andy found a calling and went on to teach at Temple Emmanuel of Long Beach, Temple Emmanuel of East Meadow, and at Suburban Temple. He was a mentor to Rabbi Mickey Baum, as you heard. He loved being with the CRT Men's Club group. Teaching was so important to Andy that he became a college professor at Hunter College, teaching the courses necessary to become certified as a rehabilitation specialist, which was, of course, his first job. I don't know how he found the time to do all that he did, but Andy did what he loved, whether he was good at it or not. He loved to dance and took social dancing with Deanna at college just before their wedding. When the professor told him to sit a while the professor danced with Deanna, Andy still danced, and he was able to keep up with popular music and theater, and he also watched British murder mysteries on TV with Deanna. All things that he enjoyed just so immensely. There were so many accomplishments, but Hatsnaulechet, the most important, was that Andy knew how to walk humbly with God. His family and his friends were truly all the reward that he needed. Yeah.
I'm at the end because I wasn't sure that I would be able to do this. But looking out at all of you who have shared today has brought comfort to me, has brought support to me, as you all brought support and comfort to both Andy and I in the last 3-year journey that we've had. As importantly are all the joys that we've shared together, whether it was seeing a show, eating meals, being at celebrations, all of these things make up the fabric of Andy and I, our lives together, and you are such an important part of this. So I'd like to share with you these words, which are to my husband, not necessarily something I always said in life, but probably should have, and that are about my husband. Andy, your life can be described in 5 simple words. You were a good man. Your choices and decisions, both in your professional and personal life, bears this out. Professionally, your career choices were always in what I call the helping professions. As a counselor for the blind and visually handicapped, as a vocational coach for high school and religious school students, as a religious school teacher, and as a college teacher for students going into careers in rehabilitation. All of these things which make us compassionate and humane human beings. I'd like to share one personal anecdote with you about Andy. Brent, this has to do with you. Brent is the oldest grandchild, and Andy loved all his grandchildren. But Brent got to share most of the time with him because he was the oldest. But when you were in elementary school, they had favorite person day in your school. I think that's what it was called at the time, where the students celebrated their favorite person in their life. They made booklets for the person, and then they called them up for the day, the person to come up for the day to celebrate with them. Well, I think they gave you a tea with them. Well, Brent chose Andy as his favorite person. The Academy Award would not have meant as much to Andy as that day and what you said in the notebooks about him. Your memories of him, his memories of you, and of the other grandchildren we have had, which Michelle Ross had blessed us with, are so important. The Talmud has a term when we first see it, Alamed Botnik. Alamed Botnik is 36 righteous people in each generation who, because of their goodness and gentleness, sustain the world. It said that they don't know of their chosenness. They're just by nature humane and gentle people. I have been privileged to have met at least 2 people who have fit this description in life. One of them being our friend and teacher Edith's spouse, Julie. I've always said to him that it was a lot about them. The other one being Andy, a righteous person in his generation. There's a reading from Proverbs that I believe sums up Andy's life and his legacy. Honor a man for what he is, but honor him more for what he does. Honor not a man for his possessions. Honor him for the right use he makes of them. If one is blessed with wisdom as well as riches, his wisdom will guide him to share his blessings with others. Store up for yourself a treasure of righteousness and love, and it will be your most priceless possession. Better than the fragrance of precious oil is the fragrance of a good name. A good name is to be chosen above wealth, and character above silver and gold. Blessed is the one who bequeaths a good name to his descendants. Even a long life ends too soon, but a good name endures forever. Blessed is he whose noble deeds remain his memorial. He is remembered for his love of learning and his good deeds, for he shall be honored in life and be remained long afterwards for his goodness. I conclude from where I started. You are a good man, my husband, and I was blessed to have you as my life partner for 56 years. You have now been gathered to your ancestors, to your mom, your dad, my mother, my father, all who have loved you throughout your life, and of course, your precious dogs that we share together. Rest in peace, my love.
I know that today it's difficult to even begin to talk of comfort. But in the days, months, and years ahead, as each and every one of us remember Andy, I hope we'll all gain strength from realizing as we look back on his life just how much of an effect he had on all of us, and what an incredible man he truly was. What all of us can do is carry him with us. Remember the joy that he brought us. Hold his memory close to our hearts. We can treasure him forever. And we can honor him by loving each other and taking care of each other because that's what he would have wanted more than anything else. In Proverbs, we also read that the human spirit is the light of the Lord. And Michelle, you said it, and this comes right from there, whether you knew it or not. Within each of us, God plants a divine spark. And we have an obligation to tend this spark and to fan it into a flame that'll not only light up our lives, but light up the lives of other people. And a lit candle can be snuffed out, or it can burn out, or it can kindle other candles. And when the flame is passed on to others, that flame will continue to burn on to the end of time, long after the original candle has been extinguished. And I have no doubt, as you said, and all of us here know, that the flame that was Andy was passed on to so many people that he touched in his lifetime. And that flame will continue to burn for time immemorial. God, we ask, please be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes much too soon. Console them at this hour. Be near to them when light seems its most distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing. Our hearts go out and we express our deepest condolences and wishes for consolation to Deanna, Seth, Michelle, Rachel, Ross, Alan, Brent, Benjamin, Simon, Sarah, cousins Tama, Mark, Tina, Rachel Tuthill, Harry Rasmussen, Elliot, Evelyn, Helene, Paula, Russell, Riley, Ethan, and all other family and friends for the great burden they bear today and will continue to bear in the coming days. To his name, Chuna Yaakov ben Aharon ve'Esther, we now add the words, Zichrono lebracha. May his memory be for a blessing. But not may it be for a blessing. His memory is for a blessing. Interment will follow at Mount Ararat Cemetery. In lieu of flowers or other items, donations may be made in Andy's name to either Memorial Sloan Kettering or Long Island Cares. We continue with the memorial prayer. Please rise. El Malei Achamim, Shochen B'Homrim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kezohar HaMakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Chuna Yaakov ben Aharon ve'Esther, Shalach L'Olamo. Baal HaRachamim, Yasdireu B'Seter Kenafav L'Olamim, V'Yitzro B'Yitzro Chaim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'Yinoch B'Shalom HaMishkavo V'Nomar, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To Chuna Yaakov ben Aharon ve'Esther, Andy Pasternak, our loved one, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let him be wrapped up in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we'll be proceeding to Mount Ararat Cemetery. If you're coming along with us in the procession, we ask you to put on your headlights and your flashing hazard lights. Also, please don't run red lights on the way there. You get a red light camera ticket, and also it's just not safe. So please don't do that. If you get stopped at a red light, you'll be able to catch up to the Hertz driver is going to count the cars. We'll make sure that we all stay together. We do ask at this time that you proceed out the building to the doors to your left. Of course, if you got to go to the bathroom or something, that's fine. Just please be prompt, as we do want to get on the way to the cemetery. We'll be outside to give you further instructions. Thank you very much for your cooperation.